Today I'm going to tell you about another statue in Brazil.
And I'm going to tell you about another character in our story.
Welcome everyone to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, episode 127. Today we are going to go back to Brazil and I am going to show you another statue that I have not shown you before. And this one is in the state of Ceará. So the one that I showed you last week in the last episode was the Christ the Redeemer statue down in Rio de Janeiro. And this one, yes, this one is up in Ceará, which is in the northern part of Brazil, so very far away from the last one. And this one is, well, it's also sad. The other one is sad too, to a certain extent. But this one is probably a little more sad because this person is called Padre Cícero. Real person. He came to this valley and he basically evangelized it in the sense that he brought Christianity to this area, and he also did a lot for like the poor people, helped them live a better life. But he was a Catholic monk, and so salvation to him wasn't quite the way we believe, and how we believe people how people get to heaven and have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so this man did so many good things for the people, though, that they made him a saint and built this statue for him. And they believe that he is like God, like he's part of the Trinity even. So anyway, there's this big statue that you can go and you can see and you can remember him. And this place is a huge tourist attraction.
It's a lot of buses.
Yeah, so this is the parking area for the statue. And when you get up there, yeah, all these tour buses, people come here to see this Padre Cícero. And along the way, you can kind of see it in the background. There are all these brick buildings. That is the road that leads up to the statue. And this is what it looks like on the other side. These are all places where you can buy souvenirs and things. And on the opposite side of the street are all these poor people, these beggars. And a lot of people go here to see Padre Sisadu because they believe that he will grant them wishes and answer their prayers and heal them of diseases and things. Well, it's also believed that if you give money to the poor, you get extra favor because of that. And so all these people who know that, they will line the streets and ask for money. This is only a small portion of all the people that I saw there. Behind the statue, a good distance, is this chapel. And apparently this chapel has been under construction for many years, and the missionary who I was with told me that he doesn't think they will ever finish construction, because if they do, then they have to stop asking for money. And by keeping this project ongoing, they can keep asking for money to complete it.
Wow.
I did not go to the chapel, so this is all I can show you about it. But this is from the statue overlooking the valley. And what's interesting is off in the distance you see the city. And they placed the statue here because they believed that the city was going to move in the direction of the statue. And that all these stores would come up and all these homes would be built. But as you can see, there's a great distance of field and empty space between here and the city. That's because that never actually happened. People didn't move that direction. It was funny because there was also a seminary that was built in town on the opposite side, and the city actually moved that direction. And so as a result of the seminary, their land became very valuable, and they were eventually able to sell it, and it became commercial property, and they were able to go build on another piece of property. So interesting how God worked that out. This is the home, I guess you could say, where he lived. I think it's been expanded since then. It's now like a museum about him, and there's also a chapel right inside. And I don't know how I got this picture from the front of the chapel while I was there. I think they were observing communion. Maybe this was near the end of the service, and I somehow got around near the front to take a picture. But like I said, he was a Catholic monk, and so it's a highly Catholicized location. These are the 12 Stations of the Cross hanging in there. And then there are several rooms in the building that look like this. These are wooden sculptures, and people believe that if you come here with a sculpture of a part of your body that needs to be healed, like say you have a broken bone, or you have a brain cancer, something like that, you can come here, and whatever part of your body it is that needs to be healed, if you bring a sculpture of that and bring it here and put it in this place, that will be healed. And so as you go through all these rooms, like that one had a whole bunch of heads. This one along the wall, you can see all these legs. Apparently these people needed their legs to be healed, or someone else's. And then on the opposite side, you see all these pictures of different people. But they really believe that they will receive healing by coming here and doing these things.
It's a little bit creepy.
It is. There's also some places inside where you can kneel and pray. And so this is one of those areas. I just got a picture of it, looked in real quick. Back outside that building, let's go back here to the statue now. Some of you might know, this is kind of humorous. If you see on his head, there's like things sticking out. It's like cell tower things or whatever, because it's a high point, so they use it for that. But anyway, I knew that some people would probably notice it. At the base of the statue, people have written all over it, and this isn't considered vandalism or graffiti or anything. People will write on here. They'll write prayers. They'll write the names of people. They will do all sorts of things, and it is supposed to help their prayers be answered. Every once in a while they go and they paint over all the writing, and then people do it all over again.
Do they tie stuff to it too? Like, this looks like there's a bunch of ribbons and stuff on there.
Yep. I don't remember exactly what all those ribbons were, but they all are same idea as the writing on there. And then the staff on the statue, you can see here there's a man squeezing in between the man and his staff. Well, it's believed that if you go around this staff, you have a better chance of your prayers being answered. And if you go around it 3 times, you have a really, really high chance of it happening. And so some people will come here and they'll go around this thing once. And it's a tight squeeze, but most people can make it. Here is a man with his daughter who's going around. And like I said, if you really, really want something to happen, you would go around it 3 times. The missionary told me about a time someone came and tried to go between, and they got stuck. And so, rather than going back out the other way, all these people went and held on and pulled until the person was able to squeeze through.
Oh, well, that's one way to do it.
But then the rest of these are just some pictures I took of people that are praying and truly believe that this man is basically God, and that he is hearing their prayers. And it's sad because it's all empty, and this thing can't do anything for them. And he died and never came to life again like Jesus did. And so that's why I also took these pictures in black and white, because it just was a somber time for me to go there and see what these people believe and what they're holding to. So that is the statue of Padre Cícero in Juazeiro, Ceará. And I've been there a couple times, and yeah, both times just really sad.
It's really interesting. I'm sure there are lots of places like that around the world, of locations that people worship a person or an event, and they're missing the creator behind that person or event. Which is kind of sad.
Yep. Wow, who showed up here?
Oopsie. Somebody was supposed to be sleeping. That's okay. I'm going to tell you some more of our missionary story.
Okay.
So you guys can go hang out for a little bit.
Baby Jaden. Say bye for now.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay. So if you've missed the first 5 parts, because this is going to be a 10-part story, if you've missed the other parts, make sure you go back and get caught up. So we kind of are going to switch characters here a little bit. We've been talking about Hamid and his sister Kinza, and this nurse in Morocco and his family and all of that. We're going to switch a little bit to somebody else. Now, at the beginning of this story, Hamid hated darkness, right? He did not like being in the dark at all, and that was just one of the scariest things to him. And his sister also lived in the dark because she was blind. Well, there was another girl who lived in the dark, but she would have been very angry if you told her she lived in the dark because she thought she had everything. This is the little girl we're going to start talking about, and this is Jenny. She lived in England, and she was the daughter of a very wealthy family, so they had lots of money, and she could basically have anything she wanted. So if you were to tell her that she was living in darkness, she'd probably get really angry at you and not even understand. But she was living in darkness. She didn't know who Jesus was, and she had not trusted him as her savior. Well, Jenny had somebody who was praying for her, and that was an aunt. Her aunt was a missionary in Morocco, the same missionary we've been talking about who was a nurse. And that aunt knew that Jenny didn't know Jesus, and so she was praying for Jenny, that one day Jenny would trust Jesus as her savior and that she would have a relationship with him. Well, Jenny lived her normal life. Then after Christmas, something scary happened. She got very sick, and the doctor said that the best thing for her would be to leave the damp, cold climate of England and go somewhere sunny and dry for a while to help her body. And her parents thought, and one of the first things they thought of was that that Jenny had an aunt who lived in Morocco, and that was a very sunny place. So they packed up their things, and they got in their car, and they drove from England over to a place where they could cross the channel. They took a little ferry with their car, and then they drove some more, and then took another ferry until they got to the country of Morocco. And the whole way there, Jenny got to play with all of her new Christmas toys, and she was singing Christmas songs, but she didn't really understand the meaning behind those Christmas songs. Well, they got to Morocco, and they got to their hotel, and immediately their car was swarmed by all these boys, and Jenny looked at them. They looked awful. They were dirty, and they had torn, worn-out clothes, and they were fighting each other outside the car because they all wanted a chance to carry some of these bags into the hotel, hoping to get some money from them. Jenny just stayed in the car. She did not even want to get close to them. Finally, once all the bags were in, the boys left, and they went, Jenny and her family went over to see her aunt. And she was so excited. "Oh, Auntie, I'm so happy to see you. And you have a little girl." She saw a little girl standing next to her. And she went over right away to the little girl. And Jenny had in her hands a doll. And she offered it to the little girl. "Here, don't you want to play with my doll? It's so beautiful." And then she was offended. "Auntie, this little girl won't take my doll. She probably doesn't even have anything as nice as I have. And she doesn't even want to play with this one. She's not very grateful at all." And her aunt said, "Well, let me explain to you, Jenny." And she tried to take her hand, and Jenny pulled her hand away. "No, this little girl just doesn't even know what's good for her." And her aunt said, "Jenny, I'm trying to tell you, this little girl is blind." It was Kinza. She can't see. She can't see that you're offering that doll to her." "Oh," said Jenny, "well, you should have just told me sooner." And silently, her aunt just stopped and prayed, God, this little girl needs you. She doesn't know that she has all these problems and she has a really bad attitude. She needs to know that you love her and that you care about her and you care about each and every one of your children. So Jenny was living in darkness. And after a little bit, they went back to the hotel and kind of freshened up. And then Jenny's aunt invited her back to come visit the clinic with her. And as they walked through the streets, Jenny just tipped her nose up. She couldn't believe all the dirty people and dirty children in the streets and how everything smelled and people did not look very clean, and she just didn't even want to look at it. And she didn't even notice that the people were watching her, noticing this girl with very light skin and light hair and white shoes. Who would ever buy white shoes? And how she ever kept them clean, they would never know. And as they were walking through, her aunt stopped, and Jenny said, "Oh, please tell me this is not where you live. This is so awful." And Jenny's aunt just kept praying that God would give her an opportunity to share the good news of the gospel. And she took her inside, and Jenny thought, well, maybe it wasn't as bad inside as she thought it might be. But still, this was not a very nice place. Then Jenny's aunt was going to go visit some families who had some sick children, and so Jenny got to go along. And she was going to be so proud of going to help her aunt, who was a nurse. And as they got to one house, there was a baby that was sick in this house, and right away, Jenny's aunt gave her directions. I want you to go to the kitchen, I want you to get a cup from this shelf, and you need to get a spoon. I want you to wash the cup and the spoon first, and this whole time, Jenny did all of these things because it kind of made her feel important, but she also didn't like taking directions. She wasn't used to people telling her what to do the whole time, but she tried to tell herself it was okay because she was doing a big, important job. So she helped her aunt with the baby, and after a little bit, the baby seemed to be feeling better once they got the medicine, and they moved on to the next house. And as they were going, Jenny said, "You know what? When I grow up, I'm going to be a missionary nurse just like you, and I will take care of the little babies and children and their families." And Jenny's aunt said, "Well, you can't be that. You can't be a missionary nurse." And Jenny said, "Why not? My family has lots of money, I'm very smart, and I can learn and do anything I want." Jenny's aunt said, "Well, let's wait. Let's talk about this sometime. And you're going to have to come back next time to see what they talk about and what Jenny discovers."
Why can't she be a missionary?
I know, she's got a bad attitude, that's for sure.
Okay, well, that might explain a lot of it. All right, so today, Alyssa's going to tell us about someone really special.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about Lydia Scott, who was my roommate when I lived in Peru. And she is in Hong Kong now, and it's kind of been a while since we've given an update on her. So I asked her a few questions about life in Hong Kong and some things to share with you guys. So this is Lydia. And I asked her, the first question was, how much Cantonese do you need to know to get around Hong Kong? And Cantonese is like a version of Chinese. So she said, you don't actually have to know any Cantonese to get around. That's what makes it such an international city and a great place to visit if you want to experience Asia. English was the sole official language of Hong Kong from 1883 to 1974 when Great Britain had rule of the city. And after that time, the government made both Cantonese and English the official languages. They confirmed it in the Hong Kong Basic Law, which is to Hong Kong kind of like what the Constitution is to the US. The English would be the official language after 1997 handover to China. So almost every sign in the city has both languages, and almost every Hong Konger can speak some English with varying levels of proficiency depending on their age or where they work. And almost every place of business has both Cantonese and English options for their patrons. On rare occasion that the sign doesn't have English or there's no one to speak enough English to help her, she has translation technology on her phone. So this is a public transportation sign that has both the Chinese and English writing, so it makes it pretty easy to figure out where you need to go, which is good because I can't read those symbols, but I can make sense of the rest of the words. The one place that does not have English signage, though, and very few English speakers, is the local wet market where she buys her fruits and vegetables and eggs. You can see in the back of this picture that all the signs are in Chinese, so she has no idea what makes these two bins of oranges different, or why the orange is in one bin, are more expensive. Sometimes she uses the translation app on her phone to ask about vegetables that she doesn't see, and sometimes she's been given the wrong payment because numbers are hard, just like they are in English. Makes sense. It is a little bit confusing to communicate in a market. I asked what people thought about the government's lifting of the quarantine for incoming visitors. So Hong Kong has had some really strict rules for COVID and really hasn't let people in the country. And she said, the Hong Kong people are mostly hopeful that the government lifting the quarantine for incoming travelers is a sign of life getting back to normal in the city. Unfortunately, the feelings are mixed because the recovery is just beginning for Hong Kong. The recent changes in incoming travel restrictions will impact outgoing travel restrictions more than incoming travel for the time being. Hong Kong residents have begun to consider traveling for business and leisure, but foreign tourists will probably take a while to come back to the city due to the other restrictions, such as vaccination and mask mandates, health monitoring, and you have to use a location tracking for contact tracing in the city. The current entry mode is called 0+3. The 0 stands for the number of days the incoming travelers are required to quarantine, so they don't have to quarantine anymore. But the 3 stands for the number of days that their health will be monitored and their activities around the city will be restricted. This model won't do much to aid the damaged local economy. So the most significant change locally will occur when the government finally reopens the border between Hong Kong and China, and she doesn't think that's going to happen anytime soon. This is a picture of the airport from June. Not very busy at all. You can count the number of people, and Hong Kong airport is usually extremely busy. She said it is much busier now in September, now that the restrictions have been relaxed a little bit. She gave us this sign here that you would see if you went to McDonald's. So I'm pretty sure we don't see a long list of signs like this when we go to our McDonald's.
Not usually, unless it's like, buy this.
Yeah, right? So she said, here are all these signs to enter this McDonald's, including a QR code that everyone is required to scan to register their visit with the health department and to prove their eligibility to enter the premises based on their vaccination status. These QR codes are at the entrance to every public venue, and since last year, they've been required by law to scan and show their vaccination records at all restaurants, government buildings, and public gatherings like church services. So until rules like these are removed, it's going to be hard to convince tourists to come back to the city, especially if they don't want to follow all those rules.
Yeah.
I asked her about what church is like in Hong Kong, if it's a lot of older people, younger people, the size of church. And she said churches in Hong Kong are about as diverse and prevalent as they are in the US. Some churches are small, like hers, with about 50 people on average, and some are mega churches with thousands of members each Sunday. The membership is diverse in age and nationality, but she thinks there are a lot more young people who identify as Christians due to the traditional Chinese beliefs and religions keeping a tight hold on the older people of Hong Kong. Her church meets in rooms that they rent, 3 of them that they rent in a commercial building with lots of little businesses like gyms and dance studios and hairdressers. 1 room they use for children's ministry, 1 is for the adult service, and 1 room has like office and overflow space. She thinks that a majority of the Hong Kong small churches have a situation like this. In fact, other churches meet in the same building as hers. However, some churches do have their own buildings, and most commonly when the building also functions as a school, which makes sense, so it doesn't sit empty all week long. There are churches for every denomination in Hong Kong as well. She lives next to a Catholic church, and down the road from her is a Latter-day Saints temple, and sometimes she sees Mormons and Jehovah's Witness in her neighborhood. This is the Catholic church, and it's also an elementary school. But here is a picture of the service at her church. So lots of people in a very small space, it looks like, but they're making it work. But then her church uses that same space, that same auditorium space, as a tutor center during the week. So she's in the exact same room. You can see the piano up in the corner, the chairs are all stacked in the front, and they have all the piano and all the screens and everything are just moved out of the way, so now they can use it for tutoring children in English.
Nice.
I asked her about what the people think about having China take over Hong Kong. And she said, freedom of religion is protected in the Hong Kong Basic Law. It's kind of like their constitution. So most people have faith that the system and authorities will protect that freedom. However, during all the protests back in 2014 and 2019, lots of churches and leaders provided shelter for the protesters and spoke up against human rights violations and stood openly with the democracy movement. Since last year's national security law determined that all forms of protest would be considered acts of terrorism, who's to say that maybe China won't extend its control over religious activities, especially with the church's tie to the democracy movement. More than half of the elementary and secondary schools in Hong Kong are connected with a church. She teaches at a Baptist school, and she has friends who teach at a Lutheran and a Christian Alliance school, and she knows others who help with YMCA-run schools. In January, the Education Department announced that church-run schools could no longer require their students to attend religious classes, and students could request exemptions from any religious activities. Some people are concerned this could be the beginning of the government's attempt to attack religious freedom in Hong Kong. The policy, in addition to the national security law, which includes specific requirements for the curriculum, prompted her school to change their name of their Bible class to Life Skills class this year. But every classroom is required to have two flags, the Hong Kong and the Chinese flag. Do you know which one is which?
The Chinese one is the one with the stars.
And the Hong Kong one is the flower. She also sent a few more fun little pictures too of some of her students from her classroom. Always excited to smile for a picture. And their enthusiasm always is encouraging to her, and she can't wait to see their smiles someday.
Aww.
And then she sent another picture. This was a free concert of the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra at her local town hall for the first day of fall. And it was a good reminder that no season lasts forever, and through the creative expression of music and art, we can share hope for the future. She said she's so thankful that God is faithful to give her reminders of his promise for an eternal hope. So that's Lydia in Hong Kong. It's kind of cool to hear little bits and pieces. I feel like every time I ask her a question, she helps me understand the culture and the background and all of that so much. Probably even better than my own culture sometimes.
Yeah.
But she's really good with words. So yeah, that's Lydia. And you know what? You can pray for the people in Hong Kong and in China who have to deal with some tough government situations, but God can still work through those situations, which is a good thing.
Yep. Thank you for joining us again this week. It was great to have you again and to share some more with you, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time.
Bye.